from you.
Great, thank you. So, just as a disclaimer, this is my first ever guest lecture. I've done lots of lecture shout-outs in my past, but probably never a full hour. So, ask me any questions at any time. We can do a Q&A session at the end if you want. But if there's something that you don't quite understand that I'm talking about halfway through, just raise your hand. Just quickly, can I get a sense of who's really interested in event management in the room? Okay, cool. A few people then. So my title I'll explain a little bit more later. It's evolved from, I've never been called an event manager, but I have managed events. So what I'm going to talk through a little bit today, and hopefully it's helpful, is my background, sort of career journey, if you like, my current role and my personal brand, which sounds a bit, but I'll kind of hopefully make a little bit more sense later on. Saying part two, it's not really a part that I'm going to move on to, it's just something that I hope will kind of flow throughout what I'm talking about, and that's how to develop a career progression plan. So that's something, not a 10-year plan for yourself, but something to progress whatever role you're currently in, and how to spot an opportunity and what to do with that opportunity. So yeah, I'll talk a little bit about the jobs that I've had, my university bit a little bit. I'm not going to talk to you too much about that. You guys are at uni, so you know what it's like. But my roles since then. So I'll get going. So my career background, I kind of split up into three parts. So this is something that I have done for myself, so I remember the different stages of my career so far, but also something that when I've gone in to see employers and I sort of had job interviews, I've talked about my career in these different parts. The first bit being going to university, so I do define that as part of my career when I talk about it, because that's the first step I really took to doing something that I wanted, something that was going to affect what I was doing going forward. So, and then I combined with that the jobs that I did at university. So I'll talk a little bit more about who these companies are, but the kind of my whole university experience, which was 4 years, kind of goes from, so you've got, that's the first part. The second part is the roles I did after university. That was me getting any job. So the bits I did here was to get myself ready to have any job. The bits I did in the next stage, which was Jamie's Italian, which anyone's heard of, it's Jamie Oliver Restaurant, and Cancer Research UK, I kind of used that then to figure out what I wanted to do. And the next part, which is the last, 7 years or so, are roles that I actually actively wanted to do, and they were the roles that I think set me up for what I'm doing now. So whether that's going to be something that you guys do, that's something that I do, how I talk about my roles, but it's nice to split it out, because if you've had as many jobs as that is, you're not going to want to talk about all 7 jobs all in one go. So you could talk about them in stages. So first of all, my university, I did biomedical science, commonly known as pharmacology, which is drug development for any non-scientists out there. So I spent 4 years really trying to learn about how drugs get taken care of by the body, a lot of biology, a lot of chemistry, a lot of maths. I did a foundation year at the beginning because I didn't have the right A levels, so it was kind of a prelim year if you like, and then moved on to that. Things I learned, and kind of this is the way I'm going to talk about my different kind of career bits, is talking about things I've learned or key skills, highlights, and the roles that I've had. So things I learned just quickly, I didn't want to do science after university. I hope that you guys are a bit more, this is where you're going, this is you're going to do media, you're going to do event management, whatever you're doing, that you won't, I wouldn't say it was a mistake because I learned quite a lot, but I learned I didn't like exams, that I really loved my final year project and the way that that got assessed, the work that I put into it. And also, I've got at the bottom there, I wanted to work for a charity. So I joined a society at university. Is anyone else part of a society? Yeah, a couple of people. So I'm not sure whether you guys have it here, but it's called RAG, which is Raise and Give. It's a charity fundraising society. So basically everybody that's part of it, what you do day to day is try and raise money for different charities that you choose. So you run events, you do fundraising collections, lots of different things. And most universities have something like that. If it's not called that, it might be called something different. But quickly I joined that in my first year and I realised I wanted to work for a charity. Now, for a time I thought, well, maybe I'll work for a science charity, so maybe I'll go and work for Cancer Research UK. But I quickly learned that actually it wasn't really the science route. It was more people and event management and things that I liked doing as part of that society. So I started off as social sec, which means organising trips to the pub and going out a lot, which is what I did in my first year. I then progressed to something maybe that sounds a little bit more impressive, which is vice president, which was in fact in charge of the budget, I suppose. So the university, we were given a little pot to put on these events and helped organise events and trips and things. I'd say my highlight was organising a fundraising trip / social to Dublin and Amsterdam, and we won Society of the Year. I think it's because what first attracted me to that society was I'd just started university, I wanted to make loads of friends, so I thought I'd join loads of societies, that was a good way of doing it. And actually I only stuck with this one because I think what they were doing and raising money for was charities, which really appealed to me. So that was a highlight there. So I'm not going to talk too much about university because I've changed a lot since then. There's also pictures throughout the slides, so just to add a little bit of entertainment. So really what I did outside of my course really shaped what I'm doing now, which I think is really important. If you are hopefully you're all interested in your degree and want to pursue it, but if it's not exactly what you hoped or what you thought or what you're changing to, you can still work into what you want to do. But it's also about the other things that you do outside of your lectures. So I had 2 jobs while I was at university, not concurrently, I didn't do them at the same time. I did one job while I was at university in Cardiff, and then I did one when I was back in Birmingham. I'm originally from Birmingham, by the way. When I was back in the summer, and to fill my time. The course I had was 35 hours a week, like face-to-face, lots and lots of lectures. I didn't really have time to work at a bar or do a sort of full-time, part-time, if you get what I mean, job. So I did both of these companies are agencies. Well, the bottom one's an agency. Off to Work. They operate in Birmingham, if anybody does live in Birmingham, but they're an agency that employs staff to, you log onto their website, you put yourself forward for a shift. It was mostly waitressing, event hosting, what else did I do? Working in boxes at like arenas and things. I think I worked at the Ricoh Arena, which is Coventry, I think. Just checking. Lots of different stadiums all around the country, and that agency made me be able to go to loads of different places. Agency work is a good thing, I think, for students. I know there's a lot of debate about 0-hour contracts and all that sort of stuff, but for me it worked perfectly. It meant I didn't work when I didn't want to, but I could work when I wanted to, and the wages weren't too bad either. A highlight of that was being selected from the Birmingham team, which was quite small at the time, it's now grown massively, that company, was to go and work at the Scottish Golf Open, which sounds quite boring, but it was a whole week of working with basically other university students. We worked 13-hour shifts for a week, so I wouldn't recommend it, and it was really, really, really hard. But it kind of set me up for the summer then, 1 week's worth of work, and I was kind of fine for the rest of the summer. The opportunity that I think I got from both of these, so it kind of relates to my career down the line, but I wanted to do at my role, a couple of roles on, I went back and I knew people from these organisations. They donated prizes to something else I was doing for fundraising. They, one of the team leaders used to work a lot of the Brit Awards, and I said I wanted to go along to the Brit Awards and see what it was like, because I liked events, and she got me a job. It was waitressing in the time, but at least I was in it. And then also with Compass, I've had sort of job offers since then. So this was what I was doing when I was 18, 20, and then now at 29 I'm still getting people that knew I worked for Compass, and I'd kind of spread my network, I suppose, and I'm still kind of reaping the rewards of what I was doing when I was like 19 and 20, which is pretty good. So that was kind of my highlight. At the time I don't think there was a highlight, it was really hard. It was a lot of long hours, sometimes the jobs are not glamorous. Working at weddings was fun, but probably not when you have to break a fight between bridesmaids and things like that. It was less fun. But also any of you that are thinking about events and thinking, oh, I'd love to be an event manager for a wedding, think about it carefully, because they are incredibly stressful to work at. Being only a waitress there, I saw the event manager and she was having a bad time. But I think there's a lot of, I was able to manage my job, my studies, part of a society, looking after myself, all in one go. So I knew then that I could multitask, that I could manage talking to different people, all that kind of thing. So that kind of set me up there. So that was good. Key skills learned, I sound silly, but meeting and working with new people. When you're put on a shift with someone for 13 hours, you've got to find conversation for that long. I was put in that situation a lot, and you get to meet loads of different people from different backgrounds, different countries, different parts of the UK, anything, and it's good to be able to communicate with new people and work with them. When you've got something that you need to do and get it done and you've only got a certain amount of time, you bond quite quickly. So I'd say that was good. Being flexible as well. A lot of the time when you turn up to events, the job that you think you're there to do or that you've got in mind isn't the job that you'll end up doing. I've been an event manager and had to clean sick up off the floor. I've had to take a girl to hospital. That's not what you think when you're going to be an event manager, but you need to be pretty flexible in turning out what you want to do. So, the next bit. By the way, I'm fully aware that the person I'm in a picture with is not Jamie Oliver. I do have a picture somewhere, but I couldn't find it. This is me with another... does anyone know who that is? No. Another famous chef. I've got a thing about food, and this is kind of what I'm going to talk about here. So...
Is he on Saturday Kitchen?
He is on Saturday Kitchen. It's James Martin from Saturday Kitchen. I'm not surprised that none of you know who that is. But, so when I finished uni, I wanted a job. I needed a job pretty quick. And I came back from Cardiff Uni, and I came back to Birmingham, where my parents live, and I wanted a job. And they were opening a restaurant in Birmingham, James Italian, which I'm sure many of you have already heard of. And they were hiring everybody from scratch. So I thought, well, this sounds probably all right for a bit. I'm probably not going to do it for very long, but, you know, why not? See, it'd be fun for the summer. It was great actually working at a new opening, whether you've done it in retail, restaurant, or a new business, a startup, which is, I kind of work in a startup now. It's evolved, but it was a startup. You get to shape a lot of the things that happen in that first opening period. We had 2 full weeks of training, which was great. There was a lot of food, a lot of wine tasting. I did do a spirits tasting though at like 9 a.m. once, and that was not that enjoyable. But it was a good couple of weeks. Again, everyone was pretty much in the same situation, and again, you bonded with them quite quickly. I was there for about a year, and then I kind of realised that it sounds terrible, I should get an office job, which isn't not for everybody, not that you have to do that, but I thought I should probably go and see what that's like for a bit. So, but before I left, I really like training, which I still do now. I do a lot of training for new people that join our company. I've done guest talks, things like this before. I like imparting my knowledge, or some of my knowledge that I have, on other people. So I decided to train new staff when they came in, put myself forward for that. Also designing a training matrix, which is basically a training plan for new starters. And then the skills I learnt when I was there were managing a team, so I was a team leader, which is difficult when you're 18, 19 and there's perhaps older people than you, that a lot older, than you're trying to manage them. Something that I'd say has probably been difficult throughout my career is I often get mistaken for a student. It happened earlier, actually. But I look quite young, I'm female, and sometimes people don't take you seriously, so you have to make them take you seriously, which is something I learnt when I was at Jamie's. How to deal with unhappy customers. My God, there was a lot. They were very demanding people, and having someone shout in your face about the pasta being cold, you learn to harden up to that quite quickly. I think that probably set me up for working with unhappy clients, which is what I do now. Hopefully most of the time they're happy, and when they're happy it's delightful, but when they're not, it's pretty bad. So being able to cope with that and not burst into tears and run off, like a lot of people do when they first start out waitressing, is a pretty good skill, I think. And going back to that training bit about training different types of people, I'm sure you're all completely different types of learners. I'm sure many of you are struggling to concentrate right now because I'm just talking at you and you're looking at a screen. But some learners write things down, take photos, make notes. People learn in different ways, and that was one of the things I learned quite quickly, is that just showing someone how to carry a plate doesn't work unless sometimes you might have to talk them through it, sometimes you have to show them. It sounds really basic, but it's a pretty good skill to have, to be able to communicate with different types of people and teach them different things. So that's kind of the first bit before I get on to my office job. Does anyone have any questions about what I did or how I got any of those jobs or anything like that? Yes. No? Cool. I'll carry on for a bit and then you can ask me if there's anything that you're not clear on afterwards. So, but before I got an office job, I still wanted to work for a charity, and a lot of charities, I'm sure you may or may not know, they don't have a lot of money. They rely entirely on funding. That's how they do their business. They often throw out internships for students or for recent graduates or for apprentices. Actually, now you can get different types. They're looking for people that are, essentially, it's not paid. Internships are changing. A lot of people are paying people for internships now, especially if they're over a couple of months, because it's not fair, really, if you're working that hard to not get paid. But this one, at the time, was unpaid, and it was home-based, so I could do this while I was working at Jamie's, so I just reduced my shifts there, and I did this internship. It was marketing communications intern for West Midlands and Wales, which sounds like a huge area, and it was quite challenging to work across this area, especially when you don't drive, you're 18 and you live with your parents. So that was quite tough. But this was basically to promote Race for Life events. I take it most of you have heard what those are, so running events for people to raise money for Cancer Research UK. This was my first event manager type role, I think. On the day of the events, I was a volunteer manager, so all the volunteers that were coming to help out, to signpost, to hand things out, etc., came to me, and I would brief them and I would tell them what to do. In the background, before those events happened, my role was to promote these events out and try and get more people to join the events, basically. They went all the way, as I say, West Midlands to Wales, and my job was to try and find free opportunities for us to promote these. I think one of the best things that I managed to get was a stand at a trade show. So, those exhibitions that you go to and wander around and look at all the different stands, kind of like a fair. I managed to get one for free. There was no budget to decorate the stand, so I decorated it entirely with flyers. That was the only thing I had. So I spent 2 hours covering the whole stand in pink flyers for Race for Life, and found some balloons from one of the other stands I could borrow. Turns out it was pretty successful. There was quite a few people that came up and wanted to find out more about it. And that's this bit about being resourceful. A lot of the time when you're thinking about running events or anything else, there's a certain budget. You can go over it sometimes. There might be a bit of contingency money there. A lot of the time that's your budget and you've got to stick to it. So you've got to be resourceful, whether that's resourceful with materials and things like that, or whether it's people's time. So a lot of the time, a lot of people give up their time for free to come and help you out with things, and that can help you with projects or events that you're doing. So an example of that is for the job that I do now, we run a lot of events, and sometimes we need volunteers or we need extra hands to help register people or greet people, and paying those people is a lot of money. So a lot of the time I reach out to students to see if they want to help, because students will do it for free. Sometimes we pay them, but it's good experience. So that is a way of being resourceful and looking at what you can do and what you can get. And that's a really sort of, I think, important part of event management and my role here, because it was looking at what I could do with small bits of money and not a lot of time and as much effort as I could put in. So I found out about this, if you're trying to think about where you find these opportunities. This, I think, I can't remember this, Milk Round, which is like a graduate website. I think I found it on there. But then when you go to Cancer Research UK, they have internships all of the time. They're one of the biggest charities in the UK, obviously, and they have a lot of these internships. I think they're still running in the same way. Bearing in mind, I did this, 9 years ago, so it's hard to remember. But the opportunity there that I saw, I'm not just doing my sort of day-to-day role of this, I spotted other things. So the internship was for 3 months, but I requested if I could stay for another month. They said yes. They weren't paying me, so it didn't really matter. So I stayed on and did it for another month. And then I am one for giving feedback. I give a lot of feedback to things that are given to me. And I thought, this internship is good, but there's probably bits that it could be a bit better. The way that I was interviewed, the way that I was set the work that I was given, the way that they paid me my expenses, they paid for your travel and things. There was a lot of things that I thought this could be better. So I decided to speak to my manager, who didn't, obviously everyone was home-based. I think she was based in Wales at the time, which is another thing I learned. Being managed remotely is challenging. Not having someone there to help you every day is difficult. But I said, can I help you change this internship programme? And then she invited me up to London, and we met with the internship team in London, and I kind of gave my view from my experience to say, it was great, but I think these things are better if you do it like this. So that was a really good opportunity for me. I think I had an interview for Cancer Research UK later on in my career, and I can't remember what it was for, which probably means I didn't really want it that much anyway, so that's probably quite a good thing. But one of the reasons I think I got that interview is because I'd done this. Literally because I'd worked for the company once for 3 months. And the fact that I'd gone to the head office and mentioned what I did, that secured me that interview. So I think, again, it's looking for these opportunities where you can find them, and it's kind of having that broader picture. So try and think, what am I doing now, but what do I want to do eventually, or what else is there here that I could do? Other key skills, which is quite good that I learned, Cancer Research UK, one thing they did do very well was their interview process. A lot of the jobs that I've been for interviews for, even to the job that I do now, have been very relaxed, very informal, not a very good process. There's a lot of things they could have done better, but this was the only sort of big company I've ever worked for. So they had an assessment centre for interns. I'm not sure whether anyone would have been to an assessment centre yet. Has anyone been to one? Does anyone know what that is? Everyone knows what it is. So I went to Wales for this assessment centre, which, bearing in mind, in Birmingham was quite a lot of effort, and I was going to be pretty annoyed if I didn't get it. Luckily I did. An assessment centre, obviously they brought us all in from one room, everyone worked together, did loads of teamwork tasks, that kind of thing. But I'd never experienced an interview like that before. When I worked at a golf club when I was 16, I think I had a 5-minute chat with the manager there, and then I got the job. So I didn't know what an assessment centre was like, what I should do, but obviously I did something right. So at the time I think I was trying to remember what I did right to get that job. But that was a good thing for me to try out. And yeah, I suppose the highlight then was being made volunteer manager. So that wasn't the role that I was initially brought in to do. Obviously I was going to go along to the events. I'd promoted them for 3 months. I'd worked really hard on them. But when I got there, I was like, well, am I just going to stand there on the side? What am I going to do? I'm not just going to do nothing. So I said, can I do the volunteer sign-in? It doesn't sound like a pretty big role, but I called myself volunteer manager, and that sounds impressive. So that's that bit. Okay. Moving on. It feels like I've had loads of jobs. I haven't. I only really remember about 3 of them, but turns out I've had quite a lot, which is one of the things I'll probably mention to you all after, is try and keep a log of everything that you've done, your achievements, your jobs, your interview processes, because it's really hard to remember 9 years back of what you've done and what the highlight was. This was my first office job. It was a bartender training company. We trained people how to make cocktails. It was quite fun. My job wasn't particularly fun, but the company was quite a good company to work for. The kind of theme with me is I like working for small businesses. I think, personally, I don't know whether I would stand up too well in a big corporate company. I like having my voice heard. I like to make change. I like people to take my opinion seriously. And sometimes, not all of the time, but you can get lost if you work for a big company and it takes that long to change one thing, that it's quite challenging. So Cancer Research UK, yes, I put my ideas forward, but I have no idea if anybody listened to them. But at different companies that I've worked at since, I've really been able to change things because the companies are small, they're learning, they're growing, and they're always keen to find different opinions from people on how to make things better. So yeah, the aim of this company was to train bartenders up to be able to work on cruise ships, in restaurants, in bars, at events, that kind of thing. So I said, manage bookings and training materials. I answered the phone and I bound, physically, stapled together training packs. So that sounds a lot better than what I actually did. It was a lot of admin. It wasn't very well paid, but I really liked the team there. I didn't particularly like the MD that much, but that's a different story. But everybody else I really liked there. There's pictures of my colleagues down in the corner. What was quite cool, and that's again another event management bit that I got into because I saw the opportunity there, was that while I was there, they decided to open their own bar because they were training everybody else how to do it. So they thought, let's open our own bar. They opened their own bar in London despite their offices being in Birmingham. Not sure why. So they opened this bar in Euston, and their idea was to have this bar, and then downstairs every month they would change the theme of the room. It sounds like a great idea. In all honesty, it was a nightmare. Every single month redecorating a room. They wanted to redecorate it with different brands of alcohol. So Kettle One vodka was one, Bacardi was another one, and they changed the theme of the room. That was probably actually one of the most interesting projects I worked on, because I had to work with those brands. It was basically like a pop-up, if you like, of each different brand of alcohol every month. And they did events, and I had to take bookings, and I travelled down to London quite a bit, which at the time I was very excited about. And I was able to work with external suppliers. So I had to work with the PR companies for those different brands to make sure that everything was on a brand. I had to make sure that the external suppliers, that we had enough of that alcohol, so the alcohol suppliers, if you like. And also making sure that the event was interesting and we had interesting guest speakers there. So often it was brand reps, so the people that go around selling rum to people at different companies, they came in and did different talks and tastings. So that was actually really, really fun. The opportunities I took there were that I wanted to do that. I had time to do both. And I also went and shadowed the MD at his different meetings. I want to see how he conducted his meetings, what he was talking about, how he approached it. Was it a casual kind of meeting style that he had? Was it formal, more like presentations? And he was constantly pitching for new business, obviously, and new people to sell our training products to. So I just went along with him to a couple of meetings. Literally just sat there, and I was introduced as the person that was shadowing the MD, which was fine. Most people allow you to do that. So if you're ever in a job where you get the chance and you've got a nice MD or CEO or head of a different department, ask if you can go along with them to a meeting. You don't have to bring anything particularly to the table. If you do, that's amazing. But if you don't, then that's also fine. It's just good to see what people are doing. So that was kind of what I was doing in that role. I learnt resilience. As I said, there was a couple of instances where I didn't really get on with certain people, and for whatever reason, and I had to learn to get through that. You don't always work with people that you like. If you find a company where you like most of the people, it's very rare. I think I found that now, or you find people with the same work ethic as you anyway. So I've been in companies before where I can see at least 5 people in the room that just don't give a shit. They don't want to be there. And that is really demoralising. If you're working with people like that, you probably should look at thinking somewhere else, unless you really love it and you think you can help change it in a positive way. But saying that now, there's people that I maybe clash with a little bit, but they all work really hard. They party outside of work, they are social outside of work, but they come in and they do their job really well, and they try really hard and they care, which is kind of the people that I want to be around, and not the people that are just there just to get paid, basically. So resilience in that way is just being able to sort of bounce back from something shit that's happened, and then be able to kind of carry on and be it and make sure it's okay. So that was my first desk job, and that was in Birmingham. And then I had a dream of going to London, which I'm sure lots of people do, and for a while I was like, oh my god, I have to go to London, that's where everything is. Probably about 3 years I'm coming back to the Midlands, because London is very expensive. It's wonderful, but it's very expensive. And I thought at the time, I mean, to be fair, a lot of my friends had moved there. I couldn't find, I wanted to work with charities, and there isn't that many big charities like Cancer Research UK, for example, that have offices in the Midlands. A lot do, but I just, at the time, I couldn't see anything, nothing was here for me, so I'm going to apply for something in London. Actually, when I stopped looking and thought I'm not going to get there, that's when this one popped up. So I would say don't give up on it. It might just be certain times, but if you do really want to move to a different location, whether it's London or Manchester or wherever, just wait it out a bit. Don't lose all hope that you're not going to be able to go there if you want to move anyway. So this was my first role as a project manager, which, if anybody asks me what I do now, I'd say project manager. It's now probably in the last month or so changed to account relationship manager, but I was a project manager, I believe, for about 5 years until recently. So all my sort of jobs have been linked to hospitality. So obviously I was a waitress, so I worked for Compass and after work as a waitress, as a host, as a bartender, anything else you can think of. That helped me get the job at Shaker because I knew about alcohol, I knew about food, and I was interested in it. So that got me the desk job at Shaker. After that, because that's the hospitality industry, I worked with lots of different bars and different hospitality companies, and that's what this charity did. So I was trying to find this is like the common theme, really up until, I think there's a common theme, it kind of changes. But at this point, it's still to do with the hospitality industry, but now it's got a charity arm. So this company, Springboard UK, and the Springboard Charity, so the Springboard Charity is the charity arm of a business. There's a lot of businesses that operate like that. So that is for profit, they do different projects and charge clients, but then they put some of that money into a charity which does charitable work, to make it sound really simple. So I worked technically probably more under the charity arm of their business. My role was to work in the careers team, and that was to do things kind of like this, to talk to people about the hospitality industry and to try and change perceptions of it. Because in the UK, there's a lot of people that think if you work as a waitress and you don't want to, it's a bit of I'll just do that while I'm at uni. It's not a real job, I'm not really worried about it. Whereas everywhere else, especially in Europe, it's a very prestigious career to work in hospitality, to work as a waitress, to work at a hotel. It's not looked down on, it's not a stopgap, it's literally, that's what you do. So the role that I was doing there was to try and, it was working with all age groups, which I discovered as I was working there that I had more of a focus, and I was more passionate about working with young people rather than older people. So there I helped develop this careers service. So one of the main things I did, and what I thought the job was, which is a good point to make out, was to edit and create these careers magazines that would go out to schools, highlighting all the different careers in hospitality, how great it is, etc. Manage the website, manage the social media that went out with it. That was what I thought the job was. When I got there, it turned out I had to give careers advice to people. I'm not a careers advisor, and that is probably a disclaimer I should have said. So anything I say is my personal opinion. I'm not trained to be a careers advisor. Everything I've done is based on my experiences. But I was sitting down having meetings with people, advising them on what they should do in their career, and I had no clue. At that point, when I realised I was out of my depth, that I was like, this isn't the job that I want to be doing. But I didn't really read that in the job description. It did say giving careers advice, but I thought, oh, it's probably through emails or answering questions. It turned out I had to have one-to-one appointments with people. Now, I give some good advice, so I'm not too ashamed of the advice that I gave. But sometimes I was completely unaware of what I was saying, whether I was advising, whether it was any good for anybody. So at that point I felt a bit uncomfortable and ducked out, because that was a real need at the time. And since I left, actually, that charity hired someone to do that role specifically. So if nothing else, people are now getting good careers advice from this company, so that's good. But I think when I was doing this, I had to work with an external designer, so a graphic designer to produce the magazines. I had to work with the person that wrote the copy. It turns out that was someone actually internally, and we clashed a little bit. I was all for the less content, less boring writing, and she was more for the old school way where you have to it was pages and pages and pages. So I had to try and negotiate a way to edit the magazine without upsetting her, because obviously she'd put a lot of hard work into writing this copy and I didn't like any of it. So that is working with different internal and external stakeholders. I don't know whether you've covered any of this in your studies so far, but that's really challenging, and I think the most important part of that is to have a brief and to stick to the brief. When you don't give someone clear instructions, etc., then that's when it gets tricky and difficult, whatever you're trying to do. As part of that role as well, I saw an opportunity that I was a project manager without any project management qualifications. So I asked if the company would pay for me to do a qualification, and they did, which was surprising. But all you've got to do is ask. I think it's about £600, so not really that much money. And I did a project management qualification called Prince 2, which is good for project management, event management. It's a world recognised qualification. It's normally done, it's multiple choice, and then they give you a scenario to work on, and you kind of figure out how you would lead that project and all the different stages in between. So I wouldn't have got that if I didn't ask. I didn't want to pay for it myself, it's quite a lot of money, but I said, well, I'm a project manager and this is the training that I want, so they let me do it, which was great. Also, presentation and public speaking. So another part of the role that I didn't know was part of the role was to host recruitment events for clients. So hospitality companies that were opening new restaurants. Anyone heard of Ed's Diner?
Yeah.
Yep. So in the 2 years that I worked there, I ran the recruitment events for 20 openings. You might have seen now that they've closed a lot of them down. Nothing to do with me. But the staff that I got were great. But they opened too many too quickly, I think, and made a big loss on their money. But they paid us to organise, to find a venue, to recruit the people that would come along to this, to design the day, to lead the day, which was the bit that I didn't know. So I thought, oh great, organising events, this is exactly what I want to do. I find the venue, I source the people that are going to go, I do the PowerPoints, and then they told me that I had to lead the whole day as well, so present it. Which, if you're doing that and trying to run the event, is impossible. So if you're running an event and you're busy, it's not a good event. If you're sitting down on the side, watching everything pass by, that's a good event. You shouldn't have anything to do. You're there to solve problems when they happen, not to be doing things while you're there. You shouldn't be printing anything, you shouldn't be running around, you shouldn't be trying to find volunteers. That should already be done. So at that event, maybe I did have some time to do some presenting, but I didn't really want to be. So it's good to find out if they say you're going to be managing and running events, find out what that is, because there's a lot that can be done. And they might wrap it all under one title, which I liked it, it was good, it was fun, but after the 20th event of saying the same spiel about how great it was to work at Ed's Easy Diner, I couldn't do it anymore. So at that point, I decided that I liked working with young people, that actually I liked working in and around with careers and trying to build aspirations for people and help fix their career journey. But I didn't want to just do it in hospitality. There's loads of different industries out there. So working with the media industry, working with the law industry, and the job that I'm in now allows me to work with all of those different companies. But the aim of my role now is to inspire and engage young people into considering different careers or figuring out their career path before they get too far down the line that they don't know what they're doing. So, which is now where I'm at. Whew, this is long. So, I started at My Kind of Future, which is a social enterprise. So I'll tell you a little bit about what we do because it might be of interest to you anyway. So My Kind of Future is a social business. So we make money. We have an MD. It's a commercial business, but we have a social aim or a social purpose, if you like. So it's a kind of, if you like working for charities, but I also I recognise there's a lot of limitations for working for a charity. The funding that comes in dictates what you do. So if there's no money there, you can't do anything. Whereas if you agree with a commercial business, we get given a budget by clients, so clients pay us to put on events and run campaigns. So there's a fixed budget there, and you know how many people you can impact at the start of the campaign. You might go low, might go above, but at least you have a rough idea and something to aim towards. So that's what we do, but we work with universities, schools and colleges. We run events, we do advertising campaigns, we do recruitment, we do lots of different things. It's working with students, it's called working with early talent. So a couple of the companies that I work with, which might give you a better idea of what I do. So one of the companies I work with is called Allen & Overy, which is a law firm. Every year they have a load of students come in, 70 students, they offer work experience to. What we do for them is find these 70 students by doing workshops in their schools to tell them about the work experience. We do digital marketing campaigns. We do general outreach to schools and teachers to get students to apply. We built a platform for them to apply on. We set the challenge that they had to do, and then we'll take them all the way through to getting them onto the work experience. We also, other projects that we do, so we work with Channel 4. We do pop-up events with Channel 4 to get people interested in their apprenticeships. We do, what else do we do? And that's linked to recruitment. So a lot of these are beneficial for students. Everything that we do has an aim of upskilling the people that come to it, but also it might have a recruitment outcome, so we want them to apply for the apprenticeship. But some of the campaigns that we do and the projects that we do are purely for doing good. So a lot of the companies have a corporate responsibility department where they look to impact people, the planet, and they want to do a little bit of good with their money. Sometimes the businesses doesn't have a good rep, so they try and plough a little bit of money into doing good things for young people. So you'll notice a lot of the time when a lot of these big events that are for young people are sponsored by a certain company, it's probably something like similar to what we do. But they want to give back, basically. They want to provide volunteering opportunities for their employees to go into schools or do something like that. A lot of big companies have volunteering opportunities that like go paint a wall, like go clean a garden up. The volunteering opportunities that we give our clients, so the companies that we work with, are to work with young people. A lot of the time they're more interesting. They get to do talks, workshops. So one of the other companies I work with are Burberry. I'm sure everyone's heard of Burberry. They had a 5-year plan, which is from their corporate responsibility team, to help young people get into the creative industry. The creative industry is made up of 80% of people from advantaged backgrounds. So a lot of the people that work at Burberry are white and middle class. They want to try and change that, but not just in Burberry, but the whole of the creative industry. So what we do with them is to reach out to schools with high percentage of students that have free school meals, so that those students get opportunities to go to places like Burberry or to Arcadia. So Topshop, Topman, that's another one of my clients, to do like a cool workshop there and picture themselves working at a company like that, which is kind of our social mission, if you like, is to give everybody like equal level playing field, so it doesn't matter your background, your grades or whatever. If you've got the ambition to work at a job or for a company or in an industry, that you can do that. So a lot of the things that we do, sometimes we do guest lectures like this. So we organise for a business to come in and tell you about why it's so great to work at their company, but we'd also give you a challenge to do, so a task that would help you understand what it was really like to work at that company. So hopefully this ties in quite well in terms of getting opportunities. So the reason why I'm here actually is that I was running an event in Birmingham and I needed some extra pairs of hands. So I decided to email a couple of universities and say, do you have any students that want to volunteer at one of these events and help me out? And there's one there that came along. And a few more people that came along to help me out at those events. We have a lot of things like that, and a lot of the time our clients are so happy that we invite university students to help us out as well, because it will give you some experience. So it kind of works both ways. It means that I have less work to do on the day, but also you would get a great experience hopefully and something to put on your CV. My job's kind of changed. So campaign manager, basically when I first started at the company, in my team there was about 5 people. We got given a project from a client, we deliver it, we do everything from not delivering it as such, because we hire actors to do that. Actors go into schools and they are much more engaging than people like me. But we would do everything. As the team grew and as we made more money, so the business has actually only been going 6 years. We're now, in our head office alone, we've literally nearly tripled the amount of people that work there. So in that time, I was promoted to senior campaign manager, and I have a team of 3 people that support me. So I have a campaign exec that supports on the events, and I manage 2 campaign managers as well. Recently, we've now switched to what's called the client partnership team. So as we've grown again, there's more people that can do the doing. So we have a schools team, a college team, a universities team, a digital team, a marketing team, a PR team, where I brief the teams on what they need to do and I coordinate and manage the project, and I mostly just talk to the client and report back on how the project's going. That's why we've been changed to a client partnership team. A new part of the role as well for me is now to cost up and resell that to that client again. 80% of our business is from repeat clients, so clients that keep buying different things from us every year, workshops, digital marketing campaigns, events. That's 80% of our business, and we're the people that know it the best. We've delivered it, we've reported on it, so we're the best placed people to resell it. Now, this is a new skill that our team's going to have to learn. We're going to have to do a lot of training, but hopefully it won't affect our relationship too much, which is a bit of a worry. If you're talking to someone saying, oh, it's so brilliant to work with you, have you had a lovely time? Right, the next lot's 20 grand. That's when it can get a bit shaky, but hopefully it'll go well. The highlight is really seeing our team grow. So we were called a startup originally, but now we're not allowed to be called that anymore. We've been going 6 years, so you're not a startup anymore. We're also not a small business anymore because we've got 40 employees over 3 offices. So we're now a medium business. And to be part of that is quite interesting, I think. There's lots of things that I've implemented and helped change there. One which probably sounds really boring, and it is kind of boring, but I think it's interesting, is the project lead on some new accounting software. So we're getting some new software that our accounts team and our team are going to use to budget and forecast how much money we're spending as a business. I'm leading on that, even though that's not my skill set. My maths is pretty poor. But again, it's a project lead on it, so I'm just asking the finance team to do the work. I'm reporting it back to those people. I'm not actually doing anything to do with the accounting software. I'm just leading the project, which is my skill set. So that was the opportunity that I took a couple of weeks ago. And it's difficult, again, managing external stakeholders. Our finance team is not the friendliest. So I have a lot of sharp emails coming back to me when I get things wrong and don't know what I'm talking about, because I don't, because I'm not an accountant. So it's difficult, but you've got to learn to kind of balance that. Skills I've learned in this job so far, there's lots I'm still learning. Budgeting and forecasting, reporting, so on everything that you do, reporting back to the client and showing return on investment. They've given you a lot of money, so what did you do? How was it good? And team management, I have a team of 3, which is great. I've learned a lot in that time learning to manage people. It's hard. It's fun, but it's really, really hard. Helping them get their career plan to where they want to be, doing promotions, doing difficult conversations when things have gone wrong. All of those things are quite tricky. I'm not a very confrontational person, so those difficult conversations can be quite difficult for me, especially when you know the person didn't really mean to do it, or they had a mistake, or they're having a bad day. But having those difficult conversations is quite hard. So that's enough kind of talking about where I am now. I kind of would say I'm an account manager, partnership. They're all interchangeable words. Every time you see a job that's something like account, campaign, campaigns normally used for marketing and ad agencies, like marketing campaigns. I get a lot of job offers to be an ad campaign manager, which is not what I do. I'd say more of a project manager. But then you kind of split into the category of account, client, management, which is all kind of one thing. I'll come back to my personal brand at the end, I think. So if any of you are looking to be an event manager, I thought it would be helpful to list a few skills that I think you would need. Calm under pressure. There's no point having a panicked event manager that doesn't know what to do in a situation. The same with being a problem solver. Things are going to go wrong. There is not a single event that you will ever run or work on that goes exactly to plan, but you need to be able to think of a solution to it. The person that supports me on events, when they come to me and say this has happened and not give me a solution of what they're going to do about it, I switch off until someone gives me a solution. So we've run out of paper. What do you want me to do about it? You need to go and find the paper. It sounds harsh, but there's no point in coming to me with a problem. I'm trying to manage a whole event here. I don't care about the paper. That's kind of, I think, if you start event management support roles, you would probably get that a lot, and it's why event manager can seem quite harsh, quite mean sometimes, but it's really, there's just no time, and you're trying to impress that importance of problem solving on other people. Creative and resourceful. If there's no paper, go downstairs and ask to borrow some. Run around to the corner shop and buy some. Be creative with it. Multitasker, you've got to do a lot of different things. You've got to be a health and safety officer, you've got to be a host, you've got to be a presenter. If the presenter doesn't turn up, you might have to do it. I'm not saying that you will have to, but you should have a backup plan if you really don't like to present. Attention to detail as well. So the lists and the planning that goes into events to the minute detail is really, really important. The thing that you don't think matters will matter hugely. Name badges. Oh, we'll do that at the end. No, they're really important things to do. And you can have that really, really detailed list. I recently, last year, organised a hen do for my best friend that was getting married. And someone did say it was the best hen do they've ever been on, but that's beside the point. My communication to email to them and the things that I planned to a T were really, really important and made it really, really easy. I've been on a lot of very disorganised hen dos, and you can tell people who look after them and know what they're doing, you can tell the difference between someone that maybe doesn't do that as their day job. Not to say that they're not fun, but there's all these tiny little things that you might not even think about that are really, really important. This is slightly different, so account management, so they're quite separate. With a lot of small companies and small businesses, they kind of blur. There might be two versions of me if I was in a bigger company, but at the moment I still kind of paddle in between them. But it's still that solutions focused. Again, when I go to my manager with a problem, she'll ask me what I'm going to do about it. So, and that's kind of the core of our company, is to come with an answer before you complain about it or moan about it or just express a concern about it. You should have a solution ready to go. Even if it's not going to work, you just have some idea of what you're going to do. Being extremely organised and forward planning. So I think I talk about forward thinking. I plan sort of 9 months in ahead. You might think that sounds a bit daunting, and a lot of people that join our company are a bit like, oh my god, I can't think that far in advance. You have to try, because you have to have something to work towards. One of the main basics of event management and project management is to have a timeline. That's the first thing you would do. You would do a strategy document of how you would going to achieve everything. You give your project an aim, and you would have a timeline of when you're going to achieve it by. Good negotiation skills. So you might not deliver exactly what you're supposed to have delivered, but if you can negotiate and it kind of hits the main aim of the whole project, I think that's really important. A lot of people get really hung up on the details. Oh, you didn't bring 60 students to the event, or the tables weren't laid out properly. Did everyone have a good time? Did 5 people get hired after that event? Then let's not worry about the details. Project managers and event managers think about the whole event as a whole. You can't worry about the little things that go wrong in the between. If everything was all right at the end, then I think that's the most important thing. Being patient is really important. You can't lose your temper, lose your cool. You have to be patient when you're working with different groups of people. You have to wait for them to sometimes send you things or do things for you. And don't try and do it all yourself, because that's not your skill set. You're not a recruitment manager, or you're not a presenter or anything like that. You're a project or an event manager. So you need to be able to trust that other people are going to do their roles properly. Sometimes they don't, but then you have to be patient and try and figure out how you're going to solve it, I think. And being personable, being approachable. I like to think I'm quite approachable. A lot of people come to talk to me about different things at work that aren't necessarily anything to do with me. But it's just being able to give people time. And when you're an event manager, you can't look at them with a face of thunder if someone tries to come and ask you a question, especially if you're doing it for a client. I've worked with people before that have been shouting at the client because the client wasn't doing exactly what they wanted to do. And I was like, they're the one paying for the event. You definitely can't do that. Or shouting at volunteers. You're not paying them. You can't be horrible to them. You have to be nice and patient and personable. So I've got a little task to give my voice a rest. I don't know how I'm doing the time either. Probably gone over. Or just about an hour. So I just thought I'd give you this quick task for you to discuss 5 minutes. It'd be really great if you could have a look at it. It's just a quick scenario of something that has definitely happened to me before. And it'd be great if a couple of you could volunteer just what thoughts on this, of what you would do to tackle this situation. So I'll give you a couple of minutes. It'd be interesting for me to see, you'll probably come up with better ideas than I did. So if that's all right, I'll just give you a couple of minutes. If you want, I'll just leave it up there.
Feel free to talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah, don't do it in silence.
Pairs, try and brainstorm this and how Penny will overcome the scenario.
Don't tell them. They can't because I will panic.
So all the events are booked in at 2 o'clock.
They can't.
Call the person.
Call the students, see how they're doing. If they're not going to come, then call them,
Then
let them know. And then move.
Okay. Would anyone like to volunteer anything that they would do? If you try and think about it if someone wants to offer a couple of points, that would be fine. Think about it in the order that you would do it as well. Anyone want to go?
Quick question.
Yeah.
Just to get it straight, the event has happened, right?
Yeah. So
Or is it currently taking place?
no, it's happened. So we've had 5 events, and the one at Cardiff University and Leeds University, they were yesterday.
Oh, okay, cool.
And no students turned up, and we haven't told the client yet, but obviously we need to. There's a call coming up maybe. What would you do?
And better marketing, like, engage with people, something that interests them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a good suggestion in terms of, so that would have helped us get more students there, but what do we do now? Like, that's already happened, so what do we do now?
Well, plan so that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, so yeah, think of a plan so it doesn't happen again. Yeah, definitely.
Personally, I would call the client first hand because you don't want them hearing from another person that your event failed. And then you kind of like slide it into them like, oh yeah, we tried it and blah blah blah, we failed, ha ha ha. But don't worry, next time, ha 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 ha. You know, laugh with them a little bit. And if they still get antsy and say, nah, it's a shame they can't get a refund, it's got their money, and that's move on.
I don't think all employers are that cute.
All of the employers are what, sorry?
That cute, you know, like.
I mean, I definitely have skirted across the issue before, been like, oh, you know that Cardiff, yeah, no one turned up. Anyway, so how are you? How's your weekend? Like, some you can get away with it, some I've had just been like, oh yeah, don't worry about it, that's fine. Some will absolutely kick off. But, so you've told them, so yeah, you've called them and said, no students turned up, and they say, what's the next thing that will happen?
You would tell them like how next time you will have like a organised plan or the strategy that you'll go by to get more people to come, to ensure that people will actually turn up.
Yeah.
And you'll tell them that and apologise obviously, and probably give them a discount or something.
Yeah, potentially.
They failed them.
Yeah, it's a good thing to think about money. So, if anybody else? Yeah.
So if you understand a client that you're going to have a better plan next time, then they're just going to turn around and be like, well, why didn't you do it all that?
That does happen.
But then you've kind of like not done the research, but you kind of like now you've kind of sussed out this area, how people reacted towards, like for example, your original plan, and then you know no one like responded to it, so you're gonna have to come up with another plan.
So you've learnt from it, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a good way to look at it. Anybody else? Would anyone send them a gift?
Nah, more money wasted.
Maybe arrange a discount for next organization.
Yeah.
Does anybody kind of see, because I mean I think this is fundamentally getting to the point that you're trying to make here. The conversation has to be turned round to a positive. That's the point. Is that if you want to maintain the client's relationship, you have got to get off of the negative of the circumstances and find a way to turn it into a positive situation. And actually, if you can get the client to feel positive in relation to being on board with your organisation, then that's the win.
Yeah, definitely.
Whatever it is that you do, without going into any kind of detail or compromising yourself in relation to what's there, the point is to turn it positive. First thing I thought of was, can we record the two speakers? You know, or did we record the two speakers?
Oh, to send it out to people afterwards?
Even if there's no audience, if you've then got footfall and you can kind of say, well, yes, there was this issue, but we recorded the speech, and we know that the students in these sections have an environment that they all go on to, like Moodle or something else, and we've made sure that the speech is available there, and now we're looking to see where we can put the speech in other sites and other availability. You've turned it.
So, were you going to say it?
You could always, so they had 5 events today, so you could always mention about the other 3 events and exaggerate how well those went.
Yeah.
And kind of like what you said, like just...
Always go on the average.
Yeah, and then maybe offer to do like a free one at the same place.
Yeah. So, yeah, really, really good. So this is a kind of... every situation's different, so I can't say that this is the exact thing you would do for every single client. Some are the jokey ones that you can go, hey, should we go out for a drink? And they'll go, yeah, all right. The amount of lunches I've been to with one of my clients is ridiculous, and we've managed to keep a lot of money and not delivered on a lot of things, but she loves going for lunch, so that's okay. I have some very interesting clients, but some of them will be very, very hard on you, and those phone calls are hard. They're really challenging. You know, they're really pissed off, and you've got to try and make it up, because it's not your personal fault, so you can't take it personally, but something's gone wrong. So first thing I would do is, if I found out there was no students there, I would contact the internal team and say, what happened here? Whose fault was it, basically? Is it an internal problem? So we didn't market it enough, so we should have done a lot of marketing things better, like you said at the back. Or did the university not tell anyone about it? Or did we tell them the wrong room? Like, what actually happened, so we get a better idea. The next thing, follow up with the university, like, why didn't the students turn up? So again, you go into that, then external people that are involved in it. So you start internally and externally, then go to that one next. Evaluate the other events, so the other 3, like you said. Did they go well? If they paid us to deliver 5 events of 50 people, and we got 100 events at 3, does it matter? Are they bothered? You'll know that from the client brief originally, whether they're just worried about the number of students or whether they actually want specific numbers of students from different universities. You'll know that, so it might not be a big deal. You can say, I'll make it up on the next one. They might not have all happened. For me, that's my main aim, and what I try and do with all our partners is to say, what's the overall goal? Does it matter how we get there? Like, are you that bothered about it? And try and get them away from that detail, because things like this happen when you're in our business where the product is people in the audience. You can't guarantee they're going to be there unless you pay them. We've done that. We've paid students before to come to events. Don't ask. But provided pizza and beer, things like that, whatever. But it doesn't matter if you can get that overarching goal, I think. Check the budget. So don't start offering freebies here, there and everywhere until you've checked. You might have loads of extra money that you haven't used because the marketing was free for some reason. So you've got a huge marketing budget that you can then offer them a free event. Generally, if you're trying to keep clients, you might want to give discounts, free events, things like that. It depends how the level of importance for a client. If they're a client you don't really worry about and they never pay you much money and they buy the same thing every single year and they're not that interested, then maybe you don't want to give them a free one, and it doesn't matter if they leave. There's different levels of importance. Prepare an action plan. That is the most important thing you can possibly do. You should never enter a phone call if you haven't got a plan. This is kind of the things like, this went wrong, and they go, what are you going to do about it? And you say, oh, I don't know. Like, that's not going to go down well. Call the client, don't email them. The same with, like, what if you're going to break up with someone, you don't text them. Similar vibe. Follow up with an action plan. So you've discussed the action plan on the call. Then you would follow up with it afterwards, make tweaks to it after you've worked on it internally. Don't send it straight away until you've got their feedback, because if they don't want to do another event, then they might just forget it. But if you can follow up within their action plan, that'd be better. So hopefully that's a little bit of a clue of what I do day to day. Most of my clients, I have to say, are very happy, but some of them, there are always situations when they're not. So it's just about fixing that. The last thing I'm going to talk about, as I know we're running a little bit over, career progression planning. So I don't plan for my 10-year career. A lot of the interview question I hate the most is like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Or 10 years or whatever. I don't know. I live for the job that I'm currently in, and I give myself a progression plan for the job that I'm currently in, which I think is kind of more important anyway. And as soon as you're in a job that you can't think how you're going to progress and develop and learn extra things, it's time to go. So this is an example of mine that I'm sharing with you for 3, 6 and 12 months. So I set myself goals for those. This is part of the action plan, career progression planning that we do at our company, is setting up 3-month, 6-month and 12-month plans for people to achieve what they want to. This also ties into something that we, our learning and development model that we use, something called 70-20-10. It basically defines your time as 70% is learning and doing on the job. So you're only going to be a good event manager if you start doing events, and 70% of the things you'll learn to deal with, like 70% of your time will be spent learning on the job, basically. 20% is learning off your peers, so learning off your manager, what they do, learning off other people that you work with. So I suppose this is kind of like your degree in some respects. And then learning off your lecturers. And then 10% is the official training, so training courses, online training courses, going to lectures, things like that is like 10%. So there's not very many parts of my job. I can't go on a course how to be a good client manager. But there isn't. Well, there is one, but it's rubbish, so I'm not going to do that. But there is like an Excel course I can do. There is a accounting software course. If I wanted to do that, I could do that. But 70% of my learning is going to come from doing it on the job. So most of these will be focused on that 70%. So that's just an example. So I think whatever you're doing, it's just good to give yourself a plan of why you're there. And finally, this is just a bit of a case study. So this is someone that's probably more similar, closer to your current situation, age if you like, as well. So this is Becca. So she works for us as events. She studied event management, and this is her first role as a partnership executive. So she was a campaign executive when she started, and then we changed. But that's just a little bit about her. Her first job out of university was with us. I interviewed her actually, and she talked about being part of a society. She talked about having 2 jobs at university, and she talked about her being a quality and diversity officer at college, and that sold me on her. I knew she did event management as a degree, and I was like, that's great, she knows that, that's cool, that's fine. But it was the other bits that she'd done that were additional to it, and she's the most positive. She talks about having advice for you guys, because I said I'm going to talk to you. What advice would you give students? Doing any volunteering, and that doesn't mean charity volunteering, that just means giving up your time for free to do something that's going to help your career. Being open-minded, try different things. It might not be exactly what you want right now. In the future, you'll look back on it and be like, why did I do that? But give it a go. And being positive. Even if you give Becca the most boring job, she looks at you and is delighted for everything that you give her, which is wonderful. She's probably thinking inside, oh my god, this is really dull, I don't know why I'm doing this. But to me, she's interested, she's engaged. I want to give her jobs to do because I think she'll be good at them. Even if she needs some improvement, that's fine, but she's got a good attitude. So that's maybe something that you can think about in terms of how you could see yourself working for a company like that, company like ours even. And then I talked a little bit about personal brand. I'm not going to talk about it too much, but this is kind of how you are as a professional person. So when you have a job, you become a professional. So if anyone sees the word professional anywhere, that's literally what it means. You have a job. When I talk about myself, people say, tell me something about you. I try and think of like my personal brand and who I am as a person. Some of it's related to my personality, some of it's related to my interests, some of it's related to my job role. But those are sort of things that I would describe myself as. Project-led, so I like projects, I like having a start, a middle and an end. I like evaluating them. I'm people and relationship focused. I work best when I'm with other people. Based on my personality type, I like talking, I'm non-confrontational, I'm probably to some extent a people pleaser, but that's not necessarily a bad thing when you're a client manager because you want to please your client. I'm a positive person. I generally try and find the good situation, even when there's a bad situation. I love working with young people. I love seeing people progress, even people that I manage or going to events. When you go to a year 9 workshop and you take people from Burberry in there and they've never met anybody like that and they get engaged with the project and they present at the end and they win a prize for something, that makes me like my job very much. And finally, a host. In my personal life, I like to have people around to my house quite a lot. I like to organise things. I'm the one that organises holidays, meals out, all of that sort of stuff. That's again linked to my personality type and the job that I do. So if you can ever talk about your personal brand without it sounding just like roll your eyes, a lot of people say personal brand, but that's just, I think, how I would describe myself. And finally, in summary, just a few things that I think would be helpful for you guys, and then you can ask me any questions if you want to. Bit over. Keep a note of your career journey, not just your CV. Write down the things that you loved about it, that you hated about it, the opportunities that you've gotten for it. Literally just on a Word doc on your computer. There's nothing fancy about it, because that's the sort of stuff that will get you through your interview. You only put the best stuff on your CV, but often the question you get asked in an interview is, what was the most challenging thing that you had? You're not going to write down, someone shouted in my face on your CV, but then what did you do about it? If you've got a note of how you dealt with it, it's quite helpful. Extracurricular activities, interesting. I meant curricular. My spelling isn't very good. I'm surprised that that's the only typo that I have in the whole presentation. They're very worthwhile doing. Ask questions about everything. Never go into an interview without questions already prepared. If you don't know something, just ask. I'd rather have more questions than none, because you give someone a job to do, they don't ask you any questions, I already think that they don't know what they're doing. Do jump at any opportunity offered. Weave your personal interests and passions into your career where you can. Food was really important to me, and I managed to make that last until this job. So this job doesn't include working with food and hospitality and bars and hotels, which I loved, but you can't always do it. But where you can probably try and weave it in. And then don't worry if you haven't found your personal brand until you're 30. So I'm 30 this year, and I only really thought about having a personal brand up until the last 6 months, really, to be honest. And if you don't know who you are until that point, that's fine. No one's going to ask you in an interview, what's your personal brand? It's not a question. If they do, then I'll be worried about it. That's it. I hope that was helpful. Oh, if anyone wants to email me, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn, because that's what professional people do.
They know this.
You know about LinkedIn? Okay, great.
Okay, so if anybody has any questions, this is the time where you may want to ask. If you're interested in event management, you're interested in anything that's just been presented here, perhaps something that hasn't been presented that you want to quiz Penny about, this is your chance. Cue the sound of type.
You can ask me afterwards on your way out if you want to as well. If someone wants to ask. Yeah, go.
I have a question. It's more about a certificate that you said you had, like from Prince 2.
Oh, Prince 2
Yeah.
Project Management, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that it was beneficial for you, or
I think it's beneficial on my CV.
it's just beneficial in your CV? But when you were undertaking it, do you think that?
I think it was really. I did it probably. I should have probably done it before I started doing the job.
Yeah.
But actually, when I did it when I was kind of almost, I'd already done a year and a half of 2 years of project management anyway. And actually, it was quite encouraging to go through the processes that you're supposed to do about leading a project and think, oh, I actually do those, that's good. But it just hadn't got a name. A lot of companies do ask for, if you're a project manager, it says Prince 2 on it. And it's about the principles, really. The first part of the test qualification, if you like, is multiple choice. It's all terminology. It's very Americanized. It's a lot of jargony type phrases, which is tricky. But then if you do the practitioner, which is the add-on, that's when you get given a scenario, and a lot of the time the questions I saw were like events. It was like, how would you plan this event, going through using the Prince 2 techniques basically, and you would set it out like that. So I think it is worthwhile. You can do it online and it's a lot cheaper, but I went to a university to do it. So I think it ranges from like £300 to £600. I think. That's right.
Yeah.
Did you ever think you were going to enter the field that you're in right now when you were at university?
I didn't think I'd be doing... I thought I'd work for a charity, just because I've really figured out that's what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I was going to do in it, but I knew I wasn't going to do... a lot of people on my course went on to do postgrad medicine or do a PhD research in science, and I struggled really... I loved my degree, but it was really hard, and I knew I didn't want to do it. So I knew I wanted to do something else, but I didn't know that I would be a client manager, in fact, or a project manager. So.
So you came from like studying like science at uni and then worked as a waitress at Jamie's. So how do you think, like, what do you think secured you the job at cancer research? Because obviously it's a lot different to what you were doing before.
Yeah, I think because I'd done the society, the charity fundraising society, that genuinely really got me that first step. I think if I'd have just done my science degree and not much else, I would have struggled. But I think when you're a team leader and a waitress in busy environments, you can show that you can work really hard, you can keep up with the pace, you can deal with pressure. But I think that's, for me, I know personally, that was my real shot at being able to, because they said, have you ever done any marketing before? And I said, no. So I was like, but I really want to work for a charity, and I was part of the charity society, and I put my own event on, like I did like a clothes swap, where students brought all their clothes in and they all swapped clothes and donated money. It sounds weird, it worked well. But yeah, I said I'd organise this, and she was like, oh, so you have done marketing then? I was like, oh yeah. So the skills they ask you, you've probably done them, but you just forget, which is why I said that career log's really important. But I think that the charity link got me that one. So.
Was it hard finding work? Because you made it sound really fast. Really, but
yeah.
Like the interview process and all that stuff.
Yeah, so I think, again, because I was linked with hospitality, so the first few were relatively easy. But once I was at that bar school in that first office job, for what I wanted to find then, it was really hard. I looked for about a year, I think, until I found that job. But because hospitality is quite fast paced, if you'd done certain things, you got those bits quite quickly. But I think the longer, the more you progress into your career, the longer it takes to find the jobs that you really want. There's loads of jobs I could have right now, but I don't really want them. So I'd say my first job that I really liked, really thought, the project manager job, took me about a year to find that. No? Cool.
I'll have one last question.
Okay.
You talked quite extensively about dealing with either difficult staff, so people you're working alongside, or having to settle a dispute or some kind of disagreement with the client themselves. And obviously that's a certain skill that you must be able to have and demonstrate yourself in that kind of negotiation. So I guess really how you go about resolving those kind of clashes and how you try and ensure it doesn't affect the relationship moving forward.
I think you need to know your facts. So reading the original brief and making sure that you're up to date on all the facts that you know, that you find out as much possible information about what the dispute's about. So if the event's gone wrong, you know you've done really your research to find out why it went wrong and what happened and exactly how that process got to where it was. I think you lose trust in clients when they think that you've just not listened / not paid attention to what's going on, but you can kind of get around difficult conversations with a lot of detail as well. Really talking through the process of everything that you've possibly done to correct it, everything that you've possibly done to find out why it didn't work, and that gives you the trust. I think good relationships comes from them having faith that you've done everything possible, that you've really tried and put that effort in. if they can, you can sense that effort from that person if they've put a lot of time and thought into what they're doing. As soon as you get any air of, oh, I just forgot, or I'm not interested, or I don't really care, that's when the relationship goes sour. If things go wrong, people are people. Like, they're not terrible people that I work with. A lot of the time they work in their departments because they want to give back to young people. So generally they're very nice people. But if you can show them the return on investment as well, show them all the other things that came from what happened, what you did, it's just being patient as well. Let them rant and rave at you for 10 minutes, get it all out, and then you say, right, what are we going to do about this then? Because it is as it is. There's nothing we can do about it now. So having a plan, I think, is really important.
Is there a specific personality type that you find fits within the kind of event management?
I'd say,
Patience, obviously.
Patience, yeah. I'd say, so we did this, you may have heard of personality tests before. You can do them online, they're very easy to do. We did a colour one recently, and I'm relationship orientated, basically. So I thrive off good relationships with people, feedback, being able to take feedback, negative and positive, constant learning. That's the sort of personality that I think. If you're a potentially, so it's not always, because you can fit into whatever, they're not completely accurate, those tests. We've got people that fit into the impulsive, fiery kind of category, which can be potentially sometimes not great in that sense, but it doesn't mean that people can't do it. You just have to learn to control. If there's a dispute, just take some time to think about it. I think is important, but I'd say it's more suited to those that, relationship orientated and like to spend the time chatting to clients about their cat or something. If, it's boring, but I can make conversation about it. But it's probably less suited to those people that want answers quickly. You have to give it a time to work things out. So if you're impatient, it's true about patience. If you're impatient, it's not necessarily straight away your kind of fixed path, I think. Cool.
Do you think just your concept of the brand, the personal brand, do you think the focus of that is to understand yourself when you're able to project yourself in an interview to somebody else trying to get a role or get a business?
I think the personal brand bit is, when someone tells me about their personality, I don't just want to know what they're doing as their career. I want to know about how they're going to fit into my team, if they're going to work well with the people that are currently in the organisation, if I think they're going to learn well and be respectful to me and our other colleagues. I think that's what you can bring across in your personal brand. I don't know whether that really answers the question.
It kind of does. When I looked at the slide with your friend there, it was quite clear that how you'd identified her, you could see precisely the qualities that you were looking for in what was there. And actually, if we looked at that profile, it was quite clear that those were those qualities. She'd presented them, for somebody to pick out, and if they wanted them, that was the kind of person that they were going to get.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, there was definite skills that I needed from her too.
Yeah. And
there was probably people that were more skilled in certain areas versus other ones. It's not all just about your personal brand, but it certainly helps if you're trying to make yourself stand out. It sounds really cliche, but stand out more than anyone else.
I guess as well, if you're in an interview, if you understand what you're about.
Yeah. If you know your person, that's why I'm saying don't worry about it if you get to 30 and you still don't entirely know what it is. I think it'll change quite a bit. Past 30 as well is, you've got to your 55, you're fine. So yeah. Cool.
Can we have a round of applause, please, for all that?